Hi there. Today we are talking about a vehicle that looks like it was designed by engineers who were told, make it armored, make it powerful, and do not worry about subtlety. This is the Büssing A5P, one of the heaviest and most extreme armored cars of the First World War, a machine that pushed the very idea of a wheeled armored vehicle to its absolute limits. To understand why the Büssing A5P even existed, you have to picture the mindset of Germany in 1914-1915. The war was not supposed to turn into endless trenches. Early on, there was still hope for movement, breakthroughs, and mobile firepower. Armored cars seemed like the perfect solution: fast, protected, armed, and able to exploit gaps in enemy lines. Büssing, a company known for heavy trucks and buses, approached this problem not with lightness, but with brute strength. Unlike many early armored cars that were built on modified passenger car chassis, the A5P was based on a heavy commercial truck frame. This immediately set it apart. The designers were not trying to build something fast and agile. They were trying to build something that could carry serious armor and serious weapons without collapsing under its own weight. And that decision shaped everything about the vehicle. Visually, the Büssing A5P looks more like a moving bunker than a car. Flat armor plates, sharp edges, massive proportions, and almost no concern for aerodynamics. Armor thickness reached approximately 6 to 9 millimeters, which equals about 0.24 to 0.35 inches. This was enough to stop rifle fire and shell fragments, which was the primary threat at the time. Against machine guns, it offered at least partial protection, depending on range and angle. Now let's talk about size and mass, because this is where the A5P becomes truly intimidating. Overall length was approximately 7.6 meters, about 24.9 feet. Width reached around 2.3 meters, roughly 7.5 feet. Height was close to 3.2 meters, about 10.5 feet. Combat weight exceeded 10,000 kilograms, which converts to more than 22,000 pounds. For a wheeled armored vehicle in 1915, this was enormous. Moving all that mass required a serious engine. The Büssing A5P was powered by a 6-cylinder petrol engine producing approximately 90 horsepower. This was a large output for the period, especially for a military vehicle. Official torque figures were not published, but given the engine size and low operating speeds, torque was substantial, delivered at low revolutions to overcome inertia and armor weight. The engine was mounted at the front under thick armor, which made cooling a constant challenge. Power was transmitted through a manual gearbox to the rear wheels. And here we reach one of the A5P's greatest contradictions. Despite its size and ambition, it used rear-wheel drive only. There was no four-wheel drive. On firm roads, this was acceptable. Off-road, it became a serious limitation. In mud, sand, or snow, the vehicle could struggle badly, sometimes becoming immobilized by its own weight. One of the most unusual and important features of the Büssing A5P was its dual steering system. The vehicle was equipped with two complete driving positions, one at the front and one at the rear, each with its own steering wheel and controls. This design allowed the armored car to retreat at full control without turning around, a critical advantage in combat conditions where a slow maneuver could mean destruction. Given the A5P's length, weight, and rear-wheel drive layout, performing a turn under fire was often impossible. Instead, the crew could enter a position headfirst, engage the enemy, and then withdraw immediately in reverse, maintaining visibility and control. For a wheeled armored vehicle of 1915, this solution was remarkably advanced and showed a clear understanding of battlefield realities, prioritizing survival and tactical flexibility over mechanical simplicity. Top speed on roads was around 34 kilometers per hour, which is approximately 21 miles per hour. That sounds reasonable until you remember the context. Roads near the front were often damaged, cratered, or simply non-existent. In practice, average speeds were much lower, and careful route selection was essential. Armament was one of the A5P's strongest points. It carried multiple machine guns mounted in embrasures around the hull, allowing nearly all-around fire. Some versions were equipped with up to 3 machine guns, typically Maxim MG08 types. This turned the vehicle into a rolling fire platform capable of supporting infantry and suppressing enemy positions. The crew was large, usually around 10 men. Inside, conditions were harsh. Space was cramped, visibility was poor, noise was constant, and heat built up quickly both from the engine and firing weapons. Communication relied on shouting and experience. There were no radios, no internal intercoms, and no comfort features. This was a fighting compartment, not a workplace designed for human well-being. Despite these challenges, the Büssing A5P had a clear tactical role. It was intended for road-bound operations, security duties, patrols, and fire support in areas where roads existed and resistance was expected. In such conditions, its heavy armor and strong firepower made it extremely dangerous. Infantry without artillery support had very few options against it.
However, the reality of the First World War quickly exposed its weaknesses. As the war settled into trench warfare, opportunities for wheeled armored cars diminished. Deep mud, shell holes, and destroyed infrastructure made movement difficult. Vehicles like the A5P were increasingly restricted to rear areas or special operations. Mechanical reliability was another issue. The sheer mass placed enormous stress on the drivetrain, suspension, and wheels. Breakdowns were not uncommon, and recovery of such a heavy vehicle was a nightmare. Once stuck or disabled near the front, the A5P was often impossible to retrieve safely. Yet it would be unfair to call the A5P a failure. It was a product of its time, built for a war that had not yet fully revealed its true nature. The lessons learned from vehicles like this directly influenced later armored designs. Engineers began to understand that armor and firepower alone were not enough. Mobility, traction, and terrain adaptability mattered just as much. In many ways, the Büssing A5P stands at the crossroads between armored cars and tanks. It was too heavy for roads, too vulnerable off-road, and too specialized to adapt easily. But it proved that heavy armor and multiple weapons could be mounted on a mobile platform, even if the execution still needed refinement. Today, the A5P is remembered not for widespread success, but for its ambition. It represents a moment when engineers were still exploring what armored warfare could be, experimenting boldly, sometimes recklessly, in search of answers. And those experiments, even the flawed ones, shaped everything that came after. If you enjoy stories about machines that dared to push boundaries before the rules were written, make sure to subscribe. There are many more forgotten armored giants waiting to be rediscovered.